In a 100-plus page document sent to players and obtained by ESPN Tuesday night, the NBA broke down virtually every detail of what life inside its campus at Walt Disney World will be like when play resumes next month, from COVID-19 testing protocols to social distancing guidelines or off-time activities. You'll like this, Stephen A. Ping pong and haircuts. Any player who has a positive test for COVID-19 will have to rest and refrain from exercise for 2 weeks from the later of the date of the player's first positive test and or resolution of their symptoms if they have any. Once someone tests positive for the virus, the protocol lays out a several-step process those individuals will have to go through, including being placed in isolation housing and having to undergo a second test. June 24th is the deadline for players to notify teams if they are choosing not to play. Stephen A., a lot to digest in this memo. Tell me this, sir. How concerned are you about this July restart actually happening?
I'm not concerned about it rehappening. I think it will, but I think that there's going to be some trepidation on the part of players because being constricted to the degree that they are, they're going to think about that as opposed to the benefits that they should be appreciating that they're reaping from this. You can't do a better job, in my estimation, than what Adam Silver has done in putting this together. I mean, this is some stuff. Dr. Fauci came on the record and said weeks ago that the NBA seems to have the best plan, and they seem to have put all the protocols and measurables in place to ensure the safety of the players and all NBA personnel to the best of their ability. And when you read some of the particulars in this, it's incredibly exhaustive, but nevertheless, every I has been dotted, it appears every T has been crossed, and there's really not but so much more that the NBA Commissioner Adam Silver can do. Those first 2 weeks where players basically have to be confined, in their hotels, the first couple of days to their rooms, those kind of things are going to be a bit tough, particularly when you're not allowed to have loved ones and family members in attendance at that particular moment in time. But it's a price worth paying when you consider all they have to lose if they don't have this season. And so I just look at it from that perspective. I do think that there's a reason to be slightly concerned because you're going to have a few dissenting voices in the fray, constantly breathing in people's ears and face about how, you know what, this is just too tough for us to deal with. But in the end, I think wiser heads will prevail. They will go on, they will approve this, and they will move forward in having their season continued.
I am more optimistic than I was before that the NBA will not only restart its season, but complete its season. I believe that it is the only major league in the United States that will do so. Maybe some others will start. I think almost certainly they will not finish. And this is the latest reason, Stephen A. I think there will be players and dissenting voices for two different reasons. One, because of what they have to go through to complete the season, and two, because of the social unrest since George Floyd's murder. Let's deal with them one at a time. Number one, what you have to go through in order to have a season. And remember, there's enormous financial incentive for these players to do it. If you look at South Korea, Stephen A., who had it much worse than we did in the beginning, they have contained it, 1,000 times better than we have. That's almost not an exaggeration. They've done a much, much, much better job because they've had experience with SARS and H1N1, and they learned from their experience, they understood what they had to do. They had to have strict social isolation, they had readily available testing and multiple tests for people, and you got the results back very quickly, they were ready. And once they found, so what that does is you find the disease, you isolate the disease, and then you contain it that way. We have not been able to do the same sort of thing. But the reason that's instructive is the NBA is taking the kind of South Korean approach. Look, this is not going to be fun. It's going to require sacrifice. It will not be normal. You will not like the way you have your kind of individual liberty as you see it. You have to buy into it, but you're not going to like the way it feels to not be able to do what you want all the time. But if you want to get this done, that's the way to do it. Not in a permanent way, but for now. And And the NBA is behaving that way. The NBA is saying, let's look realistically at what we have to do. There needs to be a bubble. You can't bring people in at first. When you eventually, it's not going to be fun, guys. Mm-hmm. But if you want to do it, this is what it's going to take. That sober approach, Stephen A., I think puts them in better stead than the other leagues. And then finally, the social unrest. We see players now who are of that mind, able to extract concessions and cooperation from leagues in an unprecedented way. And I believe the NBA players will be able to continue to do that and amplify their message by playing. So for those reasons, I'm optimistic it'll not only start, but it'll finish.
Well, I'm optimistic that it'll start and it will finish, but I'm not optimistic that there won't be issues. For example, waiting 7 weeks before you can see your family members, being only allowed to have one as opposed to a multitude of loved ones coming to visit you, hotel accommodation, stuff like that. I heard one player ask for a jacuzzi, and that's why he was upset, because he was told that's not going to happen, and that's one of the reasons he didn't want to go. I mean, you hear all of this kind of stuff, but in the end, here's what it comes down to, Max. It's a true story. It's absolutely true. You know I got my sources. But here's the deal, Max, and I think it's important to bring this up.
You're making a lot of sense to me.
When you're talking about Major League Baseball, for example, there's a whole bunch of owners, as you know, because you love your baseball and you follow it. There's a whole bunch of owners that don't want a season to resume. They don't want that. They don't want that to happen. They're looking at it as, excuse me, let's not have a season. Let's reopen talks. Let's make amends for some of the concessions that we gave up, that we never wanted to give up in the beginning. It is a mistake to believe that that is not applicable to the NBA, and that's why I've been so dogged against what Kyrie and Dwight Howard have proposed. Not against them, because they're good guys, just against what they're proposing. And Avery Bradley, add him to that mix. Here's why, Max. You're talking about what attention you want to bring to black issues, but you're also talking about disempowering yourself economically when ultimately you're looking for economic empowerment. That makes no sense. I was on the phone yesterday with a few people, including a couple of owners, and I was told this, Max Kellerman: if they don't have a season, that force majeure provision will kick in. We will rip up that CBA. That obviously eradicates everything. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.